Thank you for that warm introduction, and thank you so much also for this invite, because I was really looking forward for for this qualitative research webinar. A reason being, we do so much of research on the field, especially the qualitative research that I keep on doing on the field, and it is essential to disseminate that to the student community. And these kind of webinars become a platform for dissemination of knowledge, for dissemination of research practices that we actually do on the field. So how do the principles of qualitative research can be actually applied on the field? Can be these experiences I needed to share with everybody. So thank you so much. So when we talk about qualitative research, I'm going to share my screen. Just give me a second. Just let me know if you're able to see the screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, great. So when we talk about qualitative research, many of my students come and say that we want to do a research project. And what kind of research methods should we do? Should we use quantitative research methods, qualitative research methods? So even before we begin with that, you need to be very, very clear as to what is your research paradigm, what is your research question. And without that, we cannot, come to this point. Okay, I'm going to do this kind of research or other. Just my screen has got stuck for some reason. Just give me a second. I'm unable to log out. I don't know why. 1 second. So what are we going to do from today's session? I thought I'll divide it into few important parts. So one, we will begin with what is qualitative research, then go to the research paradigm, then come to the techniques of qualitative research, analysis in qualitative research. The question, most important question, when is qualitative research being used? Coming to the principles of qualitative research, certain principles are uncompromisable. So irrespective of whether you are students of law, whether you are students of social science, whether you are students of history, economics, whichever stream you do, but the basic fundamental principles do not change. So we will look at those principles. Then there is also certain qualitative softwares. We know that for quantitative, you will, the next session, you will learn about Strata and SPSS systems. But there are also qualitative softwares which people use, the academicians and researchers do use. And most important, how can you apply this qualitative research in law? So this is how I'm planning to go about it. So qualitative research, when we say, it is an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. That means if I come from a commerce background and I want to study something about a law, and I can still use those principles and learn those main concepts out in that stream using a common conceptual framework. So it is interdisciplinary. Qualitative research also is many things at the same time. What does that mean? It is many things at the same time. I'm sure everybody is from Mumbai, staying. So probably at some point of time, you would have used the metro lines from Andheri to Ghatkopar and so on. Now, We all know that metro line has probably eased our way of commuting. It has helped us to reduce our time frames. It has helped us to reach meetings on time. By using the metro lines, it becomes very convenient, comfortable, it's AC, so on and so forth. But this is somebody who has already used or been using the metro lines. Now, when you're trying to study the commuting experiences of somebody who has never used, or probably is staying in the far off suburbs of probably Kalyan or Titwala, the metro lines are good enough and they need not travel by, by the suburban railway system is good. So if you ask the commuting experience, they will say, oh, but metro is not required in Mumbai. It's a waste of, there's so much money. Why is the government spending on these kind of infrastructure when there are so many other things? So when you are studying a same thing, it can mean different from the context that you are coming from. So your standpoint is very important in qualitative research. So the perspective, the standpoint of human beings are important. What is qualitative research? It also involves finding out what people are thinking, what people are feeling. And rather than what they are thinking and feeling, what are they saying? How are they communicating those feelings? How are they communicating what they are thinking? Are they thinking an X thing and communicating a Y thing? Are they feeling sad, but they are saying that they are happy? And many a times you would see that when you ask somebody, how are you today? They will say, I am fine. No, internally, they might not be fine. So qualitative research is actually about talking about how are people thinking, how they are finding. It is about the standpoint of people, standpoint of different people. So same thing can be experienced in a different way. Qualitative research is also very subjective. When I say subjective, we know Taj Mahal. Taj Mahal is, the national heritage, a wonder, and people come in hordes, in thousands, in lakhs to see Taj Mahal. Now, from a tourist point of view, the person might say that, no, my experience of seeing a Taj was like magnificent. It's a magnificent monument. Somebody else the perspective would be that, no, it's a monument of love and that's why we like it. So a third person might say that it is a monument of history and hence we need to respect it. Another one would say it is a monument of skills, craftsmanship. So architectural students would look at more from a wonder from how the carvings is done, how the structure is being, what kind of material is being used, and probably look from that perspective. And somebody who is would look at it, no, this so many skilled craftsmen were actually killed, or rather their hands were taken off, and so this is not something that we really need to. The point is the same monument can be looked when you do a research. The same monument, people will have different perspectives. So qualitative research is also very subjective. It depends on whom are you asking, what you are asking, when are you asking those questions. So it involves feelings, impressions rather than numbers. So when we say qualitative, it doesn't mean that numbers are completely absent, but what I'm trying to say is it is more focusing on what are the feelings and impressions rather than the quantitative aspect. Going to the next slide. In a qualitative research, when you even before you begin with that, I said that research paradigm is very important. So in a research context, what do we say by paradigm? Paradigm is nothing but it's a system of ideas or a worldview which is used by community of researchers to generate knowledge. So it's like a set of assumptions that or research strategies or a criteria for rigor that is shared, even taken for granted by that community of researchers. So when we do our empirical, we want to study natural sciences, then the research paradigm is about empirical analytical way of studying the science phenomena. When it is interpretive paradigm, it is about accounting for the meaning of human experiences and actions. So why have people behaved in a particular way, in a particular time frame, in probably in that history? For example, in domestic violence cases which get registered, that if you interview the police and say what are they will say that, okay, it is how are the women at when they are experiencing domestic violence, how is their reaction in the police station, how is their reaction in the courtroom, how is their reaction at home, and how is their entire social life getting impacted because of domestic violence or because of not getting the legal justice which they deserve. So this is very interpretative. So it accounts. So the second paradigm is very interpretative, and the third paradigm of research is critical. It includes Marxist, feminist, and psychoanalytic. So in critical inquiry, it is basically understanding as a tool which is used in the ongoing process of practical transformation of society. And here I'm going to give an example later on if we have time. I'm going to give you an example of a live research which was focused on changing maintenance laws in India, and what kind of transformation process, what kind of strategies was used, what kind of multiple researchers were in that project, in that research project, and how qualitative and quantitative mixed methods of inquiry was used, and ultimately what was the result. So I'll keep that for later. Critical paradigm is also the aim is to foster self-reflection, mutual learning, participation, and empowerment. Now, what are the common techniques? And I'm sure you would have done this many number of times. So here are 3-4 techniques which are normally used for qualitative data. One, the first and the foremost is the in-depth interviewing technique. Now, students ask me, so my one interview should be of how much time, ma'am? It should be of 30 minutes, should be of 40 minutes. Then can we call it as an in-depth interview? And my answer to that is that in-depth interviews, the time can vary. There are times in my research where I have done in-depth interviews for sometimes for weeks together of the same person, and sometimes it's like at different points of time the same person. So in 1 year I have done in an in-depth interview, the answers are okay. Maybe after a year again I have done, the answers probably are okay, and there would be some addition, and after maybe 2 years again so in-depth interview is trying to find about a particular thing in depth. So there cannot be a time frame defined as to how much time should I spend on in-depth interview. That depends upon what kind of project or what kind of research questions are you engaging with, and what kind of knowledge or generation that you want to do. So when I say that it can talk, it can go in months, because here the project that I was involved in qualitative research, we were studying a particular organization which was existing for 40 years, and the journey of that organization, how it has evolved, how the organization's programs have evolved, and how was the impact in the society. Now, to understand that, a 1 hour window is not enough. So in-depth interview is definitely a technique which gives you a holistic and view of a particular event, of a particular person, and it also gives you a specificity of the problem that you are addressing. Second is the focus group. And here, when I'm again coming back to the in-depth interviewing techniques, when you are doing interviews or probably sexual violence survivors or domestic violence survivors, or you're talking about impact of medical termination pregnancy act of the changes that have happened in recent times. How is it impacted? People are not going to come out very openly in your first meeting. So that rapport building exercise is also very important when you are doing the research. And hence, in-depth interview will range from, as I said, from maybe an hour or days or weeks or for months for a person to come out with. For example, for surrogacy, which was right now very altruistic, which has the act has changed, but prior to that, when there was no where there were no guidelines as to surrogacy, it was very difficult for a researcher, and some of my students actually interviewed surrogacy, mothers who were surrogates too, and they were kept in a particular place, and to understand it was very, very difficult. So in-depth interview, the time range can vary. Second is focus group, and we know that sometimes people are not ready to speak individually, but at the same time they are very comfortable when to speak in groups, because in group your own identity kind of becomes subdued, and you get that much confidence when you are talking in a group. So group interaction is a means to explore the issue being studied, and participants are usually selected, not always, but are usually selected because of their shared social or cultural experience. So if I want to study the like the what are the issues of adolescent girls living in the slums of Mumbai, I have to go into that slums of Mumbai to actually see what are the issues. So this is kind of what we can call as a participant observation method, where you have to be with those participants to observe a particular. So here in participant observation method, we were actually studying the menstrual hygiene practices of adolescent girls in Mumbai, in different bastis, in different slum areas. And many a times you can only do observation, and you get a lot of information by just observing your participant. Uh, Fourth is the ethnographic studies, and this is especially when you get immersed in the particular area. So, for example, there was in Nandurbar, we were trying to study what is the impact of financial inclusion on the tribal areas. So there we had to be with the people to understand their culture. Uh, you know, Financial inclusion can mean a X thing to people living in a Mumbai metropolitan city. It could be meaning a completely different to somebody who is from a Yavatmal, a rural region, and financial inclusion could be a different thing in an area like Nandurbar, which is a tribal area, where people, it's poverty and hunger is to an extreme. So when even you are giving the money for financial inclusion, to most of the money can be utilized for consumption rather than for production. So one has to adjust, understand the place, the culture, to actually study it. So this kind of study is called the ethnographic study. The fifth is the projective techniques. It's a highly controversial, and it's not, I wouldn't recommend that kind of, it's used by the psychologist. It's not very proven, but still being, it's used. So this is the other technique. But in all these qualitative techniques of collecting qualitative data, I would say that there has to be an extensive engagement with participants. Not just participants, also with your data and setting, is because these are the essential features of all qualitative research to whatever modes of data gathering that you are doing. So it cannot be that I am interviewing a person, I want to finish my project, I don't know. That kind of attitude a qualitative researcher should not have, because you have to empathize, and this is completely different from the other objective way of looking at research, because qualitative research is as we said, that it is very subjective. So when you say it is subjective, when we say it is from standpoint, when you say it is about individual perspective, then you have to understand your participants very well. Otherwise, the richness of the data is very difficult to get. Many times we feel that, oh, qualitative research, that means it must be very easy. You know, I do not have to engage with theory. I wouldn't have to engage with method or analysis. In fact, whatever kind of research that you are doing, you have to engage as a researcher. You have to engage with the theory, method, and analysis. This cannot be done away with. So all of these are, you have to interconnect in order to have a qualitative research process. So what is in qualitative research, what is an inductive approach? It basically seeks to build up a theory which is adequately grounded in number of relevant cases. You need to have a field text because these are kind of field notes that you are actually writing. As a participant observation, you would have made certain observations. If you are going to the courtroom, you want to observe how people are, reacting, how family members are reacting in the courtrooms. Then these are your field text notes notes that are going to be important. Of course, your research text, the certain notes and interpretations which you would have done apart from in whatever, be it your focus group discussion or your in-depth interviews or your ethnographic study, there would be certain notes and interpretations which you would be using to support your actual questionnaire or interview. So these notes are important to supplement it. Also, working interpretative documents. So writers, when you start with a qualitative research, you have to have a basic framework is there, but you have to make an attempt to sense out what is your participant talking, what have you learned from it. And this cannot happen on day one, but it's a gradual journey, I would say. And most important is writing notes once your research starts, or rather even before your research starts, you have to start making mental notes or physical notes as to exactly what is it that my participants, I want to ask my participants when they say also, and we will look at how the qualitative data gets analyzed, but what are they trying to say and how are you interpreting? Are your biases coming in the interpretation as a researcher? So these are some of the things that one as a qualitative researcher, one has to be very, very mindful of. And the last is the public text, which is the final document or the final research paper that comes out. But the process is a long one. Coming to the principles, and as I said in the beginning, that certain principles are uncompromisable. So these are certain qualitative research principles. So one is appropriateness, and I'm going to go in depth in each of them. One is appropriateness, adequacy, transparency, authenticity, coherence, reciprocity, and permeability of the researcher's intentions, engagements, and interpretations. Now let's break each of these principles into smaller parts. So what is appropriateness in qualitative research? First and foremost, are your sampling strategies suitable to identify the participants and sources to inform the research question? Now, I'm going to give examples of my own students. Now, here they wanted to study electric vehicles. So this was my research, one of my media research student, and he said, ma'am, I want to study the perceptions of electrical vehicles among youth. Now, I asked him, whom are you going to question? My friends and my families. Now, is this sampling strategy suitable to identify the participants? I would say no. By saying understanding the perceptions and attitudes of youth towards electrical vehicles, qualitative technique will not help, because you need certain quantitative technique, quantitative data to actually say that, no, this is the perception of youth. And if you take out the word youth also, understanding the perceptions of Indians towards electrical vehicles, again, it's a very broad term, and you cannot just have a sampling of people from the age of 18 to 25 and say and generalize it and say this is the perception and attitudes of Indians towards electrical vehicles. So here you have to be very, very clear as to what is your whether you are fulfilling that criteria of appropriateness, or you have to modify your research. If you think that no, I do not have the research participants, then please go ahead and modify your research question, but don't try to fit the other way around of I've already defined my research question and now I'm going to change the participants according to suit my needs. No, these principles have to be there, and those have to be followed. Then were suitable data gathering methods used to inform the research question? Now, as for example, as I said, we were interviewing this founder of this organization, which has worked for 40 years. Now, here the data research techniques has to be in-depth interview. So it cannot be it cannot be a focus group. It cannot be an ethnographic study. So here, what are you using a right method for your research question? So appropriateness, adequacy. Have sufficient sources been sampled to develop a full description of the problem? So when here you will have to also understand that electrical. I'm going back to the electrical vehicles. Are you actually having a sufficient resources? My another student wanted to study on partition, and I said partition experiences cannot be just from the India point of view, but it has to be also from the Pakistan, and do you have the access to people from Pakistan, and then go ahead and do your research. And then the student came back and said, yes, I have found some 5 people from Pakistan who can talk about their research, their experiences of partition. And then I said, it's okay, because then you have sufficient resources to develop a full description of the experiences of partition. So full description of the problem that you are underlying. Is there a detailed description of data gathering? Next, where multiple methods and sources weighed? Were the data gathering methods sensitive to the language used? Because certain language which we use might not be that sensitive to the kind of participants that you are interviewing, that you are talking to. Then, was corroborating rival and counter views gathered and analyzed? So here, if a same incident can have a different connotations or can have a different views to different people. So are those all views taken into consideration? Now, for example, there is when we talk about, I'm going back to partition because one of my students had worked on this. So she said that partition, it was a very sad experience. It was very traumatic, and no doubt about it. We also have to understand that this is the general narrative behind it. There are also people who have certain good experience in the sense their lives were saved, their property was intact when they could bring back their children safely and properly. There could be also there could be a reunion and people were so what, and there are books actually which actually breaks the normal dominant narrative. I think it's written by Achal Malhotra, and it's remnants of partition. So certain things which people actually brought from when they moved from Pakistan to India, and how those certain material memory actually as a kind of a research she has used. So how material memory actually infuses certain happy experiences, and how that actually brings joy to people. So that kind of qualitative research was used. So are we also breaking the dominant narrative? Are we also talking about rival and counter views of are they gathered? Are they analyzed? So is the description of methods adequate for the readers to understand the context of what is being studied? Just let me know how much time I have, because I also want to share a live case, a live project. So just do let me know
Madam, please carry on.
Okay. So the third principle is transparency. Here we have to know that has the process of data gathering being transparent. When we say data gathering being transparent, you are collecting certain information from your participant. Have you been very transparent? Has that process of gathering is it being done in a very, okay, I want to complete 5 interviews today, so doesn't matter certain information, certain questions you ask, certain questions you omit, certain questions you just fill up anything just for the, has that process of gathering it, have you actually by line have the whatever questions you had in mind, have they been asked, was the participant in a proper shape of mood that he could give those, or is it just for the sake of filling up certain thing have you done? So here the process of data gathering needs to be very, very transparent. The participant also needs to be informed as to why we are doing this, how will it help. Again, where the competing rival accounts taken into consideration. Now here I can give an example of how in slums the bulldozer comes in, the illegal hutments are all kind of destroyed. And so for the slums, the same event of bulldozing or grazing their huts, it's a very painful thing for citizens, and for the other citizens and all, they would say that no, but this is a illegal encroachment on on public property, and hence this had, just a second, the encroachment was illegal and hence it had to be done. So the same event can have a different perspectives to the participants of your research if you're studying the you're studying slums of Mumbai. Now, has the data gathering given the privilege to participants' knowledge? That means you have asked certain things, but have you given the privilege that this is participants' knowledge, participants' memories that probably he's describing it to you? Have you given that kind of privilege to participants' knowledge? The authenticity, are the participants' views represented in their own voices, verbatim quotes presented? It's very important because when they use their own language, it gives not only privileging the participants' experiences, it is also giving a voice to that authentic voice which is coming into the research, and that is important to make it more credible. Our range of voices and views represented. That means not just one single voice need or one single view, that dominant view has to come, but different views, the lesser represented views should also be coming. Would descriptions and interpretations be recognizable to those having the experiences in the situation? If the participants have to go and actually read or the research paper which you have done, will he be able to connect to those experiences? That means, have you done a full justice to that authenticity? Is it there? Is it reflecting in your research? And to what extent were the power relations taken into account? So where the participants also involved, and this is a participatory research process, which normally nowadays qualitative researchers are engaging in, where the participants are also involved in documenting, checking, analyzing, and also reviewing the analysis. So here, basically you are, as a researcher and as a participant, the power dynamics, you're giving an equal power, or you're giving equal responsibility to the participant to get engaged in your research process. Next is coherence and reciprocity. So, do the findings fit the data from which they are derived? Are there linkages between data and findings plausible? So if you have to do a coherence, because just your whatever you have trying to find, whatever data has been gathered, that data gathered has to be linked in a proper way, presented in a way that it is making sense to the reader that is reading your research. What proportion of data is taken into account? That means probably you have asked 100 questions and this is just an example, you've asked 100 questions in your covering different themes. But then those themes, are you giving importance to all those 100 themes? Or are you doing a selective process of selecting, okay, now I've collected 100, but this, I'm going to do a selection. I'm just going to do a 75%, or I'm just going to do a 50% justice. The rest 50% I'm going to just discard off. No, then so it's very important that what kind of data are you taking, what kind of data you are not taking. So have the perspectives of multiple researchers taken into account. And normally we say research is a single, but in major research projects, and especially social projects, which are, there could be more than one researcher. And when there are more than one researcher, does that paper actually take into perspectives the multiple researchers, or is again the 2-3 researchers' dominant views get reflected, and the other people's views don't get reflected? So, what kind of in research also, what kind of perspectives, or what are there multiple perspectives taken into account? Next is reciprocity. So to what extent were the processes of conducting, reviewing, negotiating the interpretations shared with the participants? Many a times, and this happens in that we do our research, we publish our research paper, but we do not involve our participants, even forget about, negotiating the interpretations. We are not even sharing the last research paper, which is in qualitative research, we say that no, there has to be an engagement. There has to be extensive engagement. We said that was the first thing that we said. There has to be an extensive engagement with participants and with data. So here the participants also have to, you have to show it, saying, but are these interpretations which are done, are they right as to exactly what you have said? And so last is where the participants involved in presenting the study. So normally in UN conferences, when they do a development study projects, what they do is so many people, so many farmers, we have provided XYZ things, and now their lives have changed. The percentages from the percentage of eradication of poverty is from X percentage to this percentage, it has been reduced. More gender transformative approaches have been taken into consideration. But the important thing is, are those participants of your research, are they presenting? So many a times, if you look at, I had been called to IIT campus, and there the people, that certain gender transformative approaches were practiced, and the women themselves had come sharing their experiences. Now, that kind of research, I would say, is actually about reciprocity, because the audience is also, the researcher is presenting his or her research paper to the academic audience, but also the participants' stories. So the participant is also given the privilege of sharing the experiences. The last principle is the researcher's role transparent in the interpretive process, because the researcher also comes with his own biases, with own understanding, with own worldview of the social phenomena. And so are all of these impacting your research perceptions, intentions, your values, your preferred theories? So that means certain biases there is possible of creeping in. So permeability of the researcher's intentions, engagement. So this is like a tool, or we can say we have to continuously keep on checking. Oh, is it that my own intentions is it getting reflecting? Is it my certain biases, my values? And there are also researchers who say that, okay, this is my position on a particular event. I feel that this, and but at the beginning of the research itself, that position of the researcher is being clarified, or is being tabled in front of the audience, or in front of the reader. And is the researcher's personal experience during the research process made explicit? So if you start, if you start reading, there are also researchers who actually document in the paper their own personal experiences, also the journey of their research process, and also their own personal journey of how they have conducted the research. Coming to qualitative research tools, so here there are n number of qualitative research softwares that is there in the market. Max QDA, Atlas, NVivo, Hyper Research, and some of them are catering to both qualitative and quantitative. Max QDA does both, but it is predominantly used for a qualitative research. But one has to be very clear, when you start using also these kind of softwares, you have to be very clear as to what is it that you want to analyze. Because if you are not clear as to what has to be analyzed, then these softwares are not going to be of any help. I'm just going to show you a screenshot of how the softwares, this is a Max QDA software. So here there are certain words on the left hand side. If you can see, there are certain words. And then on the right side, you will see that, this, for example, good, it's a 4-letter, it's analyzing. How many times has it been used? Okay, 61 times it has been used, and hence it is ranked probably 2. Ranking is 2 because it is the next, and the first is like first ranking because it is being the frequency, if you see, of what is being used 103 times. So there has something kind of a content analysis which is doing in, but defining of what you want to study or what you want to look at has to be done by the researcher himself. And if you're a new researcher, then it's this software, it will take time for a person to use these kind of softwares. Ideally, after a few years of becoming a qualitative researcher, I think then one can start using. These are just some women-centric laws that I was that some of my students have studied, and I'm not a legal expert, I'll have to tell you, but from a gender lens, these laws, some of my students have studied these laws. How much time do we have now? Because then I will, this is the example that I wanted to focus on. So accordingly, I can time myself.
Ma'am, till 11:15, you can conclude.
Okay, so till 11:15, I have time. That's great.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the session, I had mentioned that I also want to discuss certain basically a project which was qualitative and quantitative, and I was focusing on the qualitative aspect of that project. The project was done. The main intention of that project was to advocacy efforts. They were trying to bring change in the maintenance laws. So this was the higher level, we can say, the aim of that of the research was to bring in change in the maintenance laws of India. And there are certain ways of how the project got developed. Of course, it was a funded project, I have to tell you. It was a completely funded project. And there were multiple researchers involved in this. Also, because it was pan-India. So it was, we got information on the quantitative aspect from all over India. And I thought that this may be of interest because you're all law students, and and from that profession, so maybe something which is of more interest to you. So I think it went on for almost 3 years because it was lockdown, and something which could have probably completed in 1.5 years because of the lockdown. It was initiated just prior to the lockdown, and I think last year I completed its submitting its complete project report. So when you want to say that I want to, this was an organization called Vasavya Mahila Mandali. So this is an organization which runs legal support center for women in Andhra Pradesh. Mostly marginalized women, but anybody can definitely contact them. They have various projects: education, nutrition, health. and gender. And in gender, they were that year they were particularly focusing on the legal aspect, legal providing, and they had for family counseling centers. Now, when they did the RTI, they wanted to basically draw efforts to change the maintenance laws. Now, when they started with it, they did, this is a pan India figures, I think as of 2020, this were and this so maintenance laws, they found that under Hindu Marriage Act, there were so many cases pending, 70,000, under Criminal Procedure Act, 76,000, under the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act, some 2,16,000. So total around 3,70,801 cases were pending in the courts. And for some, around some 22,000 cases, interim orders were passed, and some execution petitions were filed for 41,000. So quantitative part, they had already, even before I started with the qualitative aspect, they had already finished with this part. Now, if you see that how many courts, they did some RTI with some district courts. So 672 district courts, they approached and they got these figures, the previous slide figures which I had shown. From 28 from high courts, then 31 RTIs from state women commissions, national women commissions, and 31, I think, from women's cells, women and child welfare departments. They also did connected with 543 members of parliament. They initiate the engagement in the sense when I say connected with the 543 members of parliament, they issued letters. They started sensitizing this about the issue that was about the bringing, why there was a need for a change in maintenance law. And here the role of a qualitative researcher came in, because this kind of quantitative data is available, or rather they had already initiated, but they also wanted a qualitative data in terms of what are the issues that are actually women are facing when they are filing cases for maintenance laws. And here there was this, and again, multiple researchers were involved. So 100 women so interviews were done of 100 women who had filed for maintenance in Vijayawada. So the previous figures are all India figures, but the survey was done of these 100 women in Vijayawada, and it gave an indication of the magnitude of problems that women face. And here we bifurcated the legal issues. The legal issues do not remain only as legal issues, because there are social, it is impacting your economic issue. There is also impacting it is impacting your health, because once you're involved in a legal fight, then your health, your social, people do stigmatize you because you have filed, you have approached the court, your marriage is breaking, and so on and so forth. So there are multiple issues that the women, apart from legal abuse, the lawyers probably were kind of fleecing money from these women. The dates were getting extended because they were not literate. That they were literate, but not to that extent to understand the implications of the law, and they were running from one pillar to the other pillar because they exactly did not know how to approach it. So all this kind of it was that through the interviewing, we could document it, and the impacts that happened on various paths. The children's education was also getting impacted because of this legal issue that was going on with the parent, and also the economic strain that caused to these women. Now, apart from that, so here it is not just the participants that were. So as I said, multiple views, multiple experts, multiple counter views also have to be taken into consideration. So when I say participants were 100, there were other sites or other people who were also interviewed in this process. So legal experts. So in fact, even the Chief Justice of India was also contacted, and to understand, there were other lawyers who were contacted, and national women's commissions, women, chairmen were contacted, and they were even their experts opinions. So what is the to understand what is the loopholes in the existing laws, what can be done to plug these loose ends, how can women seek maintenance, and how are currently, what are the current maintenance laws, so under what different laws are women claiming maintenance, and how can they lead a life with dignity which is currently being denied to them. So the experts recommended certain changes. See, it is not about why are we doing this advocacy to bring change. The end result is that certain changes, certain recommendations have to be pinpoint, and certain steps have to be taken into. Otherwise, all this kind of research will, I mean, this kind of magnitude of research that was done would be of completely of no use. So here, um, as I said, counter views also have to be. So certain judges and certain, they were of the opinion that certain cases are just fine for harassing the husband. Otherwise, it is this case we can make out that it is of no. It doesn't have any standing. We can, so this kind of biases, you can call it as biases, or you can call it as other point of view. But it was also, what can we say? Taken into consideration in that report. Otherwise, it's a one-sided story of just women saying that, we are not getting our legal rights. So every perspective was understood. Recommendations, police were interviewed, because when for domestic, if you are claiming maintenance law under domestic violence, I feel that, I mean, from little what I could gather from after working with this organization on this project, we could make that even police forces were sometimes insensitive in recording their complaints. Or this is घर का मामला, तो आप घर पे ही निपटा के आ जाओ. But there is a domestic violence act in place, so why don't you register it under that? So there was hesitant from the police also. So sensitivity, so this research actually says that at the end, that you need to have a sensitized public servants also. The judges, one of the recommendations also sensitization of the judges, workshops, and how the cases, there is too many of cases pending, and so how legal experts, certain legal experts can take decisions, or delegations can be done, and so many other recommendations were part of this process. But one part was this was a combination of so many things. Here we were, so the legal students that were involved in this, because there was a tie-up with also with a legal institution. So students who were pursuing their law worked on it and said that, okay, this were some of the laws that under which women are claiming maintenances. And then they also studied laws in advanced countries. So what are the maintenance laws in different countries? So there were around 7-8 countries that the students had taken into, like USA, Japan, New Zealand, Germany, France, and so. And here I was actually analyzing the students' reports and what they had said. And I tried to prepare a grid out of it. And I was trying to say, okay, so advanced countries, that means their maintenance laws have to be excellent. And then we found out that, okay, just because they are advanced doesn't mean that, women are getting special or spousal maintenance. So, for example, if you look at this screen, we are doing this, analyzing certain. So we found that, okay, special spousal maintenance is very bad in Finland, and because there are only if you look at only the tick marks, the green tick marks, there are very less. In Japan, it is there is a division of property, but there is no spousal maintenance. If you can have there is no child support that is given in Japan, or there is no penalty for contravention or there is no increase in maintenance which is there. So certain criteria after studying the laws, certain criteria were actually developed. And then we said, okay, let's study all these laws, because there were huge reports that were being made by the students. But because this report was presented to the President of India actually, and the President of India will not have time to look at so much of written work. So when you're doing qualitative research also, it has to be presented in a way that is very easily understood. Certain themes have to be drawn out on what you are doing, and those themes have to be put up in a very crisp manner. Otherwise, all that research activity that you are doing will be will not be that fruitful. So these are some of the things that this project actually brought: qualitative, quantitative, multiple researchers into play. And there is also a change.org petition that was filed. I think now it has reached a lack of I think signed signatures have been collected. I know it will take time for anything to change, but most important thing is that it is a topic of discussion in a lot of circles now. And the politicians have got sensitized in this process. There are discussions which are happening in each city. So I think last month there was this discussion on this report in one of the in Delhi, in fact, yes, in Delhi, and 2-3 MPs had also been called. And then there was also a session in Mumbai, and each city will now have these kind of sessions to discuss on what is this impact of this research report that was done. So thank you so much for once again for inviting me, and for giving me this space to share my views. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. From participants, anyone want to ask a question? You may kindly put question in the chat box.
There are no questions, I think, it looks like.
Yes, ma'am. Participants, you want to ask any question? Please kindly put on the chat box. Ma'am, there is one question in the chat box. What is the difference between phenomenology and grounded theory?
Both are used for qualitative research. Now, grounded theory is more used. It is actually was used, as this theory actually was developed by two practitioners who were studying the in hospitals. They were studying the almost terminal ill patients and what was their experience of being terminal ill, and that's how the grounded theory approach was developed, and it's one of the most commonly used approach in qualitative research. However, having said that, you cannot be just restricted to one theory. For example, in this current research that we were doing, we were also looking at empowerment theory. Now, empowerment theory is can be used by a qualitative researcher also. It can be used by a quantitative researcher also, and it can be used in whatever kind of a mixed method researchers also. There is one more paper that I'm doing now, right now, looking at a collaborative governance. Now, when I look at this certain methods, certain terminologies, collaborative governance is a theory. Now, this theory, when you actually look at the papers, it's been used by many people. This theory of collaborative governance is used also by economists. It's used even by feminist scholars who are from gender. It's also used by public administration. So what kind of theories do you want to do is also depending upon what kind of research questions that you have. So, for example, if you want to, if you are looking at financial inclusion, then for financial inclusion, just as an example, I'm saying, then you'll have to look at what is financial models. We'll have to look at what is the theory of empowerment, because why is financial inclusion otherwise done by Reserve Bank of India? So your theories can be X, Y, Z, and it can be used both by the qualitative researcher and a quantitative researcher. But grounded theory is definitely a qualitative, because as I said, it was to know the experiences. And here in qualitative research, it is about privileging those experiences. You are actually taking into account. So, for example, surrogate mothers. Now, here it is again it's a grounded theory approach, because you are focusing, you're privileging those experiences of those women or those participants that are engaged in your research. Hope I'm clear.
Thank you, ma'am. There is one more question. What is the difference between a project design with qualitative paradigm and one design only to gather the qualitative data?
No, you have to explain about because there is nothing like a qualitative. It is your research is either qualitative research or it's a mixed method or a quantitative research. Or you have those paradigms, research paradigms, which I had mentioned about empirical paradigm or critical inquiry paradigm or your interpretative paradigm. If you're designing to gather a qualitative data, then your approach has to be qualitative.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes. Now I request to Assistant Professor Tanvi Naik, ma'am, to conclude this first session with vote of thanks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of everyone who attended today's session on the principles and applications of qualitative research, I, Assistant Professor Tanvi Naik of HVPS College of Law, would like to express our sincere gratitude for sharing your valuable insights and expertise with us. Your presentation was insightful and engaging, and we appreciate the time and effort you put into preparing for this session. You provided us with a comprehensive overview of the principles of qualitative research and your practical examples of its application of its in a real world setting were particularly very helpful. Your lecture was not only has enriched our understanding of qualitative research, but has also inspired us to explore its application further in our own research projects. We are grateful for the resources and the recommendations that you have shared, which we will undoubtedly use in our future prospects. Once again, thank you for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with us. We look forward to future opportunities to learn from you. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you once again.
Okay. Thank you, Tanvi ma'am. Now we move ahead with our next session for the day. Hope I am audible to all of you. So we will move ahead with our next session for the day. So I take privilege to welcome our second resource person for the day, Dr. Mrudul Nile. Dr. Mrudul Nile is a professor in the Department of Civics and Politics, University of Mumbai. He was elected as the member of the Senate of the University of Mumbai from amongst the postgraduate teachers in the year 2018 to 22. He has served as the director of Students' Welfare, University of Mumbai from March 2008 to September 2015. By the virtue of being the director, he was also an ex officio member.
Keep it short. That's enough. Yeah. We'll
Thank you, sir.
more time for this because I'll have to go at around 12. There's some guests.
Yes, I understand, sir. We welcome you, sir. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very
sir.
much. Thank you very much. I should thank my doctoral scholar Divyang for inviting me for this particular program, though it's a very, very, very busy schedule, but sometimes you cannot say no to your students. And I've been having a very, very long association with Jhunjhunwala College for I don't know how many years. There used to be old principal Dr. Usha Mukundan. So I had very good relations with her. And later on, my other student, Sadia Rahman, was working in this college. Later on, other student, Shweta Aire, she worked in the Department of Politics of this college. And now Divyang is here. So therefore, I couldn't say no because of all of these reasons. Anyways, thank you very much again. And I'll be talking on quantitative methods. I don't know. I mean, somehow, I'm very bad at this technology, and especially when it comes to Zoom, I'm really, really bad. So I'll request Divyang to kindly, help me with the slide transition. Okay, and also thank all the other faculties of this particular college. I guess it's a newly opened college. Well, today, Divyang, can we go on the first slide? That's understanding ontology and epistemology. Yeah. So basically, whenever you talk about research, these are the three things that have a lot of bearing on research as to what essentially you're doing, what essentially do you intend to work on, where does the idea of knowledge come from, where is the research problem, locating a research problem, and so on and so forth. The previous speaker was really good. I mean, she was very poised and she was trying to explain things from a legal background. I may not have legal background, but I'll tell you practically whatever I have done and how these particular results come out from this particular presentation. Actually, whenever we do quantitative techniques, it is always desirable that it should be a one-to-one basis, and online things may not work much. But I've tried to put certain things on the slides, and this is a very hurriedly done presentation. Please pardon me if I go wrong somewhere. So essentially what we need to understand is the ontology, epistemology, and axiology. So when you talk about ontology, what essentially does it mean? Okay, this originates from philosophical traditions. Okay, all of these particular three terms originate from philosophical traditions. It basically, tries to understand what do I want to study. Okay, so if you have some research problems, but then a research problem may be very big, you may think about having a very small little a part of that particular research problem also can be a part of study. So therefore, it becomes very essential for us to understand what essentially do we want to study in a particular research problem. Do you want to study the research problem as a whole, which may make your thesis really bulky, or you just want to understand one particular part of it? I mean, I'm basically a political scientist or maybe a student of political science. And there's a lot of debate going on what should happen with the current government. Okay, whatever Shinde and his 40 people have gone, what kind of amendments were brought in 1985, okay, with respect to the 9th schedule. And when you look at the 9th schedule, you find that there are a lot of debates. I mean, you all are law students. You must have heard all these legal luminaries and the arguments that they made in the Supreme Court and the interventions that the Chief Justice was also making at a given point of time. But then, when I was looking at it in depth, and when we had some rumors that there may be other political parties also, and people from other political parties may join that particular political party or BJP. Okay, one thing did occur to me. I mean, should there be an amendment to the 9th schedule saying that any party that goes with another political party, which has a majority, should this particular party exist? Okay, that becomes a question. Like take, for example, if supposing say tomorrow, okay, Shiv Sena as a whole, both the groups, Uddhav Thackeray as well as Shinde, okay, they go with, say, BJP, okay, should Shiv Sena lose its existence? Okay, should the Election Commission de-recognize Shiv Sena as a political party? Okay, now see, if you look at the amendments in the 9th schedule, you find that there are a lot of things. I mean, whether these particular people have to, should they be recognized as legislators or not, or should they be dismissed, and all those kind of things, because they have gone out of a particular political party, isn't it? So I was thinking a little bit more ahead of this particular amendment, and why shouldn't we bring in an amendment and say that why shouldn't these parties cease to exist if the whole chunk goes into or goes with a particular political party? So practically speaking, there'll be very few political parties. Okay, so so this can be one of the ways of looking at it. Okay, this is an hypothetical situation, which I'm trying to say that it may be, it is a, what should I say? It is an abstraction that I'm trying to develop. But then where am I trying to develop that abstraction from? I'm trying to develop that abstraction from the problem that is in front of us, okay, with respect to the members of a particular political party joining some other political party. So if you look at the definition of ontology, it says that it is a study of being, or it is concerned with what are we investigating, what do we want to investigate, with the nature of existence and with structure of reality as such. So what is the structure of reality and what is the nature of existence? So that means you're trying to understand what essentially do you want to study. It is also concerned with assumptions we make in order to believe that something makes sense or is real, or the very nature of essence of social phenomena we are investigating. So what essentially are we trying to investigate? That is the bottom line. When you look at epistemology, okay, epistemology essentially is concerned with providing some philosophical grounding to the things, or maybe explaining how do we know what we know. Okay, so I know that 9th schedule is there, and whatever amendments to the 9th schedule may have come, whatever. So it is the way of understanding and explaining what do we know. Okay, so it is a tool to explain the ontology. So ontology is a problem, and epistemology may be a tool to examine that particular problem. And the third is axiology, okay, which refers to ethical issues that need to be considered while planning a research proposal. So axiology is about the ethical research. So, in India, unfortunately, we don't have the ethical research committee, but any program or any research that has been conducted has to go through this particular ethical research, ethical board. Okay, be it research on social sciences also, that also has to go through these particular research boards. Like, take for example, if you want to study the behavioral patterns of people, which may have some kind of which may be detrimental to the psychology and to the understanding of people. So therefore, it is quite likely that you need to go and take permission. Can we conduct this kind of study? So axiology essentially deals with that. It also involves defining, evaluating, and understanding concepts of right and wrong behavior relating to a research. So whether, like, take for example, day before yesterday, you saw breaking news, some pharma industry R&D head, he said that we need to keep on bringing some kind of variants of this particular coronavirus so that we are continuously in business. That is one. Two, we also heard about certain things like this Covaxin and the other vaccine, whatever that particular vaccine came from, Arshad Poonawala. Okay, we find that there were no enough clinical trials were made on that. Okay, and the scientists will say that these particular things, I mean, what essentially did these drugs do? They altered the DNA sequencing of individuals, that is, of people like us. Okay, so DNA sequencing was changed so that we can be more immune to some of these kind of drugs, some of these kind of infections. Okay, so therefore that particular thing was done. Now again, we find that the time was very short and we wanted a vaccine at a very fast go, and therefore these kind of clinical research were not conducted. It also considers the value that we shall attribute to the different aspects of our research and participants, blah, blah, blah. So put simply, it addresses the question of what is the nature of ethics or ethical behavior of a researcher. So from that particular point of view, we look at this particular thing. Now, there is another very important thing that we talk about, and that is phenomenology. Okay, what is essentially phenomenology? Phenomenology is nothing but a qualitative research approach that basically helps in describing the lived experiences of individuals. Okay, so what happens to an individual? Like, take for example, so phenomenology, basically what I do is, like, take for example, I have to study the growth and development of a particular political party, and those people who built this particular political party, I'm trying to interview those people. So interviewing and transcribing that particular interview will not suffice. That is not the basic idea. If you go out and if you say, okay, fine, this is what I have to do, these are the interviews, and I'm just trying to, in a way, write the narration of what those people have suffered, okay, or maybe enjoyed, okay, I'm just writing the narration of it. That is not what is expected in research. In phenomenological method, it focuses on studying a phenomena that has impacted an individual. So what is that particular phenomena? I mean, yesterday I was watching this documentary. I think you all should watch this documentary. It is being made from the phenomenological point of view, and that is Wild Wild Country. So in this Wild Wild Country, which talks about Osho, okay, and how people were, influenced by the teachings of Osho, that is what this particular documentary talks about. And whoever his followers were, they were explaining why these people went. So that is what is phenomenology. I mean, what is the phenomena that attracted them? I mean, and I came across, and I felt that, if you, Divyang, if you could, just take a photograph of, from the internet of Osho and only his eyes. If you could just put it here, I mean, is it possible for you?
Yes, sir. Just a second.
Only the eyes, huh? And when he was young, and those days, eyes, if you could just show. So, I mean, it's all occurring while I'm giving this research. Huh? Yeah. Can you just zoom a bit more about on his eyes? Yeah, so if you see his eyes and जर का दूसरा एखादा फोटो असेल, जर का साइडनी जर का आला असेल तर अजूनच छान होईल.
Yes, sir.
See, now this particular eyes, they're very deep. If you see any of his photographs, you'll come across and you'll see that very deep and very they're very inviting, they're very talkative kind of thing that emerges. Okay, हा जो फोटो आहे शेवटचा, right hand side, last, छोटा खालचा. हा खालचा गेला. ठीक आहे. Anyways, okay. ठीक आहे. Anyways, I mean, I have made my point. Fine. We can go back to that slide. So, one of those particular ladies, she said that, the eyes were so inviting that, anybody would actually was driven towards him, or, and that is what made a lot of people go to him. I mean, that was one of the phenomena. So when you're talking about these phenomena, okay, we are talking about different kind of commonalities, behavior of people, and then we try to categorize those particulars. What are the categories in which we can put this thing? So if you people have, heard about Osho, you find that Osho's teachings are very different. Okay, he was called as Bhagwan later on, but prior to that, whatever his ideas, I mean, one of the lady tells that she was very stressed out and she went to this particular ashram and he gave different kind of, so people would laugh a lot, people would cry a lot, people would dance a lot. Okay, and she said, after doing all those 4 stages, she mentions those 4 stages, and after doing those 4 stages, people literally, I was on her feet and I cried. Okay, I was on his feet and I cried a lot. Okay, and that was quite relieving for me. So these are some of the phenomena that we basically talk about. So phenomenological research, it has roots in psychology, education, philosophy. It also aims to extract the purest data that hasn't been attained before. Okay, so we try to attain this particular data to some extent. See, I mean, I know that I have to speak on quantitative methods, but then unless and until you know some of these particular things, we cannot go ahead with quantitative, and that is why these things are very important. Now, I basically work more on quantitative, and when you look at errors that we generally do in research, so these are some of the errors that we generally make. First is inaccurate observations. That is, scientific observations are conscious activity. Okay, so whenever we're making scientific observations, they're very conscious activity. Observation should be deliberate. Okay, so we should know what kind of this thing we have to do, what kind of observation we have to make. I don't mind telling you that day before yesterday, one of my students, she came up with some paper and she was trying to show me that paper, and she had written that she had done a participant observation. When she said that she had done a participant observation, my first question was, when did you do a participant observation? She said, no, sir, I belong to the same community and therefore I know how they live. I said, no, that's a different thing, because she's working on something to do with the scheduled caste members prioritizing private employment, or maybe, seeking private employment, something, motivations for private employment. Okay, so that is what she was saying. And she had done this particular observation, and just because that particular observation was done, and she belongs to that same community, so as she says, there's no need of that particular observation. I know what's happening. I said, you may be knowing what's happening with the community, you may be knowing what is the perception of the community, but when you're saying a specific thing, you need to go back and investigate that. Okay, and therefore, after that, we removed that particular part of participant observation from that particular paper. Okay, so you need to know what participant observation is. So you may make these kind of inaccurate observations, or maybe you can go for a overgeneralization. Okay, overgeneralization is आप थोड़ा सा कुछ देख लेते हैं, बोलते हैं कि नहीं ये पूरी की पूरी community वैसी है. Okay, that is overgeneralization. So just because you have, like, take for example, a very, Britishers, they came up with certain communities saying that these communities are criminal communities, like the Fasipardhi in Maharashtra or in Solapur border that you have. Now these Fasipardhis, they are tribes basically. Okay, and even now today, if your train passes through Solapur, there is one gunman in each and every bogie in a particular patch from one station to another station. They ask the entire train to shut the shutters down, and then the train passes from that particular patch from, I don't know the station exactly, but between two stations, this is what happens. So I've traveled twice and I could encounter this particular thing. So what is happening is it's overgeneralization. But then the best part of this particular community is, though, I mean, I'm not saying that dowry is good or bad. Okay, but amongst Fasipardhi, okay, dowry is given by the husband to the wife. That is, the groom gives dowry, okay, to the bride. Okay, now there can be a reason, quite possible. It's basically because it is considered to be a criminal community. So girls won't marry those people, and therefore they say, okay, fine, we'll give you dowry and you marry us. It is, and also replication of inquiries and other safeguard. These are some of the things that we need. Again, we have some selective observations. Whenever we make observations, we are very selective. And these selective observations are mostly because of our own perceptions, our own ideas, our own ideologies, our own thought processes. Okay, that will make, okay, fine, I'm going to just look at this particular part and not going to look at the other part. So whereas when you're talking about research, the entire thing should come together. And the last is illogical reasoning. Okay, so generally scientists, they generally avoid these pitfalls by using systems of logic consciously and explicitly. Statistician called Gambler's fallacy as another illustration of logic in day-to-day reasoning. So these are some of the things that we generally do. Okay, coming to your, how do you collect the data from the field? So there are different ways of collecting data. So if you see this particular data, okay, this particular questionnaire is talking about, different kind of things, and it's all quantitative. So age in years, वगैरह वो तो ठीक है. लेकिन यहाँ पर once you come here, okay, name of the PHC and sub-center you have visited, ये भी ठीक है. That is all, yeah. So you have religion 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and whatever these people are telling, you have to take that particular. Where do you get the services of PHC, sub-center, or whatever. These are some of the data analysis. Here you will come across the data that is basically talking about, is the sister available? Sister is ANM available in the PHC. So 1 is yes, 2 is don't know, 3 is no, and 9 is unclear. Okay. So everywhere you will have these particular 1, 2, 3, and 9. So this is one type of data that has been collected. This may not be called as a Likert scale data. Okay. So this is a general data that you are collecting, right? So because, whenever you're collecting a particular data, okay, you also have to determine what kind of methods are you going to use for, dealing with this particular data. And accordingly, your questionnaire should come. So you cannot say कि मैं पहले questionnaire बनाऊंगा, but data आने के बाद में I'll think what kind of analysis or what kind of mathematical analysis I'm going to do or what kind of statistical analysis I'm going to do. No, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so I had a lot of data, but still out of this particular questionnaire, I've concentrated on, let's say, some of these particular questions, and I've grouped these questions. Same color means grouping. Okay, like take for example here, the question is about the beneficiary. Okay, so beneficiary, and I've given a direction over here saying that beneficiary in this section refers to beneficiary as in perceived by respondent. This means that individual has visited the PHC at least once. So that becomes a criteria. You're defining who is a beneficiary. Now here, if you see these three questions, have you visited the primary healthcare center? Did you visit yourself or somebody else accompanied you? And how far is the PHC center? So these questions are specifically about the PHC. Then these are the questions with the disease. Okay, tuberculosis, leprosy, and sickle cell. I've grouped them. Okay, then you also have something to do with was the delivery that is in the delivery in your family carried out at PHC. Okay, how many deliveries? And third is that is institutional deliveries we're talking about, and has the financial assistance to the delivery from the PHC. So these are about the institutional deliveries in PHCs. So everywhere we have these particular, we have brought in some kind of categories. Somebody was asking question in the last session, what are grounded theories? So in grounded theories, generally we have concepts, okay, and categories. So those categories are studied. So these are the categories that we are that we attempted to study in this particular thing. So this is one type of questionnaire where we have only 4 data sets, that is yes, don't know, no, and unclear. Okay, so we don't want to, so that saves on your time. There's another kind of a questionnaire where we're trying to see these particular codes. The codes are mentioned below. That is, one is very strongly disagree. Okay, then we have strongly disagree, we have disagree, we have neither agree nor disagree. This is called a 7-point Likert scale. Okay, so in a Likert scale, we generally have, so this will give you a very, very close to this thing kind of a data. Okay, so this data becomes very important because it brings you quite close to the results. I'll be talking about why you need to be more close to the results. Okay, so this particular data, this kind of data can be collected with the help of a data structure called as using ODK. Now this will need the whole lecture. So, a lot of people generally feel that you can collect data over the Google form, but this is a bit more scientific data. Now, once you use this particular ODK structure, ODK will directly give you your data in the Excel sheet. Okay, so therefore you generally use that particular Excel sheet. I'm sorry, my slides may be up and down. I've just made this particular thing in the morning. Okay, so see, PHC data, data distance, data service, data transport, right? So the entire thing is coming directly on this, and you have only the codes. See, 2931932312339. So these are the codes. Okay. So if you see this particular thing, okay, see data transport, was the transport available? Yeah, so this is the transport data. Okay, in bottle green color was a transport data. Okay, if you look at and after that you had A&M. So if you go down, ऐक ना आपलं दिव्यांग खाली ना एक्सेल शीटचं एक आहे. ओके, क्वेश्चन वरती असशील ना तू, स्लाइड्स सोडून परत खाली आहे. खाली तुला एक हे दिसणार, डेटा चार्ज, डेटा डिस्टन्स, डेटा सर्व्हिस, डेटा ट्रान्सपोर्ट, डेटा सिस्टर अवेलेबल. ओके, एक एक्सेल शीट आहे 1 2 3 1 2 3 असं सगळं काही केलेलं आहे बघ. ती दाखव आधी. स्लाइड नंबर 13.
Okay.
हा त्याच्यावरची त्याच्यावर नाही खाली तू ती नवीन फाईल नाही हे केली का
केली 1 सेकंड.
कारण त्यामध्ये मी तेच ऍड केलेलं ऍक्च्युली
ओके ओके 1 सेकंड सर, कदाचित आधीची फाईल.
1 आहे 1 झुंझुनवाला 1
हाँ सर 1 सेकंड.
slide number 13. Yeah. So if you see this particular slide will tell you that data visit, whether you visited alone or with somebody, data change. So these are the things I was mentioning to you about the थोडंसं मोठं करा ते म्हणजे लोकांना बघण्यासाठी. So whether doctor is available, doctor's sister is available, and the other staff is available. आता परत जा त्या रेड आणि ब्लू वाला जो क्वेश्चन आहे ना त्याच्यावर जा. This particular question. So if you see here, okay, so the last question of this, okay, that is question number Khali. So question number 18 was about doctor, question number 19 is about sister, and question number 20 is about the staff. Okay, so this 20 has not come because I've taken the screenshot of it. Okay, so you find that this particular data is recorded in that particular file. Okay, that is the which file? Your what is that thing called? In the Excel file, right? So we are on slide number 7. Slide number 8 basically again tells you about that, and then you come on slide number 9, which is ODK. So this entire data is collected on ODK. So you go in the field and you just tap on the phone, and the entire data comes over here. Then I'm dealing with this next data. Okay, this particular data I'll show you what we did with this data. Next wala slide number 10. Slide 10 essentially talks about, this was another project where we were mapping the food habits of people, okay, how much they're eating and how they're eating. So see, here it is very easy. Now, if you see cereals and cereal products, wheat, flour, dal, rice, unpolished brown rice, vagara, vagara. So here you have daily 2 to 3 times, never in the week, quantitative quantity, that is how much you're eating, and remarks. So here basically we have these 3 things. So we have again marked as 1, 2, 3. Okay, this again is a sort of a Likert scale, again a statistically compatible data. So it is daily 2, 3 times, or never. So 1, 2, 3, whatever those things may be. Okay, that again, that particular thing also goes in the data. Okay, in the data sheet that is on the Excel sheet. So this is what we generally do. So we have done a different kind of analysis for this particular data. Next slide, please, 11. So there are 3 types of analysis that generally we do. One is a bivariate analysis. Bivariate analysis is one of the statistical analysis where 2 variables are observed. Hello. Madhivan?
Sir, झालंय. Yeah.
So bivariate analysis is there. In bivariate analysis, we generally see that there are 2 independent 2 variables, that is independent and dependent variable. Okay, and we may tell how these particular dependent and independent variables behave. So while doing this particular questionnaire, that time also you have to understand what is going to be a dependent variable. What is dependent on what? What is an independent variable? Let's take, for example, social inequalities are an independent variable. Okay, and reservation may be a dependent variable. So social inequalities, and let's say not exactly reservation, but we can say, what is the other name for reservation?
Affirmative action.
Affirmative action. Yeah. So some policies of affirmative action, maybe we can talk about those particular things, right? So does social inequality, does affirmative action depend on social inequalities. Therefore, social inequality become an independent variable and affirmative action becomes a dependent variable. Okay, so we can see where that particular thing is more or less. Univariate analysis is, you just have one variable and you are trying to understand how that particular one variable is, performing or what is happening with that one variable. That is what we are trying to understand. That is what is called as univariate. And multivariate is, again, it is a statistical study where multiple measurements are made of each experimental unit. So there are multiple measurements that we are making. कि इसके साथ भी करके देखेंगे, उसके साथ भी regress करेंगे, उसके साथ भी regress करेंगे. अभी ये multivariate, bivariate, all of those particular things come at a little later stage. Before that, you have mean, median, mode, and those kind of things. So people who are from science background, they will know what mean, median, mode is. So can we go on the next slide? That is mixed effect linear regression model. Yeah, so mixed effect linear regression model essentially talks about, now I've used that particular model for that food card data. Okay, so in many regression applications, observations are made some kind of clustering with observations within the cluster tending to be correlated. So we find that there should be some kind of correlation between the clusters, and we are trying to look at that particular cluster. So here, what we had done in this particular study is we studied 17 talukas. Okay, and all of these particular 17 talukas, just give me a minute. Yeah. So basically, mixed effect linear regression model has been used, and this particular, so I was mentioning to you that there were about 17 talukas, and so that is one part. And secondly, if you look at the previous questionnaire, if you again take us to that questionnaire on food, yeah, food. No, next, yeah. So here also cereals, refined cereals, then pulses, legumes, leafy vegetables. So these are also many categories, and there are about 17 talukas also. So 17 talukas and these particular things. So obviously what happens is, एक मिनट, हाँ sir, हाँ मी बोलतो, मी विचारतो आहे का ती अवेलेबल. चालेल. So these are some categories. So these are, you can see only 9 categories, but there are other categories also. Nuts, oilseeds, eggs, meat, fish. These are the other things also that we have taken in this particular category. So you have, 2 major groups. Okay, so therefore it becomes essential that we have to do a mixed linear regression model. So if you look at this particular mixed linear regression model, you find, observations have to have some kind of clustering. Okay, so there are some kind of clustering with observation within clusters tending to be correlated. Examples include observations obtained via repeated measurements, data collected by 2-stage cluster sampling design, and hierarchical multi-level data in which units are grouped at different levels. So you have certain other studies called as, longitudinal studies and all. In longitudinal studies also, we carry these kind of things. Now in longitudinal study, essentially, what does it mean? So I'm collecting data today. I'm going to collect, after 6 months, I'm going to collect again some data. So whatever data that I've collected today and whatever data that I've collected after, let's say 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, I'm trying to correlate that. So that is what is going to give me that's what is going to give me this mixed effect regression model. Now directly, Divyang, go on slide number 14. Yeah. So if you go on slide number 14, okay, this is the data of cereals. So this particular plot, it deals with the, how many people say yes and how many people say no. So this is the answer. I mean, this is how you're reading this particular thing. It was found that the daily consumption of cereals was lower than the average, that is 74% in 5 tehsils of Shahpur, Chikhaldara, because before that we have already taken the what do you say, we have already taken the average of this. Okay, so it is lower than the 74 point, that is 50% in Shahpur, 50% this thing is consumed, cereals, Shikhaldara 60% is consumed, Tirora 68% is consumed, okay, Vikramgarh 65% is consumed, and Karzat this much is consumed. Whereas in certain other places, it is quite more. So highest proportion of respondents consuming cereals every day is in Dharani, okay, which is near Melghat. And these variations are indicated in the random intercept of 0.49, the mixed effect logistic regression model, indicating that there is variation across tehsils in daily consumption of cereals. So you are trying to see daily consumption of cereals, okay, and you are trying to see and you're trying to see how that particular thing. Another very important observation over here is, as your age increases, okay, as your age increases, your propensity to consume cereals is diminishing. So this also means that in the older age, okay, that is in terms of people who are, what should I say, who are, they're sacrificing cereals for the younger generation. So younger generations, if you see, the plot is thick up to, let's say, 47, 48, from 20 to 48, it's thicker between 25 to 45, it is much thicker. So that means that people who are consuming cereals in the age group of 25 to 30 are more, and people in the higher ages, they are in a way trying to give less or they sacrifice eating cereals in this particular area. Can we go on to the next slide, number 15, please? So slide number 15 basically talks about the data that we talked in terms of PHCs. So this is the data that emerges in front of us. If you look at the respondents tended to indicate that they were closer to the PHC, from them was within 1 kilometer. Okay, so distance of the PHC. So the difference in the responses was also significantly separate for only female responders across the two groups. So respondent, see here, whether people had faced any disease, okay, respondents from people who did not face any disease, and these are the other things that we are looking at. So this is the table that comes in front of us. Okay, so this is not done in R, whereas the previous table was done in R. Okay, this is done in Strata. So these are different kind of methods that we use to interpret the data, and data interpretation becomes much more easier if you are using this kind of technique. Okay. Yeah. Next, please, validity and reliability. Now, see, the thing is, I seriously have very serious doubts about qualitative data. A lot of people believe in qualitative data, but then whenever you're doing a research and a scientific research, I feel that we need to have a validity and reliability. So in order to do this, I have directly gone on to I showed you how the data analysis is done, but then just before the data analysis, your questionnaire also is validated. So for validating questionnaire, what we generally do is, it's called as exploratory factor analysis. We do that exploratory factor analysis and see whether this particular questionnaire is working. We go and do pilot and we come back. So you must have heard that pilot करके आ गए हैं या फिर वो questionnaire चलता है कि नहीं वो देखा है. But in a statistical way, you also check whether the questionnaire is statistically compatible, and therefore you need to do a pilot with a questionnaire. So that is what is being done. So reliability is whether your data collection technique and typical and analytical procedures produce consistent findings. So that is very important. वरना आप क्या करोगे कि आप एक data लाओगे और कुछ और ही उसमें होगा. Now you directly go on to 19. Divyang, go on 19. Okay, slide number 19. So this particular slide number 19 essentially talks about कुटुंबाची सर्वसाधारण माहिती वगैरह वगैरह. If you see, हाथ पंप आएगा, वीर आएगा, झरा आएगा, नदी आएगा, वैयक्तिक आएगा, संयुक्त आएगा, सार्वजनिक आएगा, पाणी, ड्रिंकिंग वॉटर, पिण्याच्या पाण्याचं. Okay, and here you have कुटुंबाची ग्रामपंचायत क्षेत्रातील नाव वगैरे वगैरे, घर स्वतःचे आहे का, ओके, घराचा प्रकार कसा आहे, पक्का आहे, अर्धपक्का आहे, अत्यावश्यक कागदपत्रांची उपलब्धता. if you look at this particular questionnaire, okay, and there's another next slide, Panjana, please. Next slide. Tachanantarji.
Sir, 20th slide last.
हेच कुटुंबाची माहिती, कुटुंबाची जमिनीचे क्षेत्रफळ किती आहे. Now, if you look at this particular thing also, now, if I tell you that this particular research was basically looking at something to do with CFR, okay? CFR is community forest rights. And you find that so much of data is collected and community forest right data is very minimum. So this is a problem. So therefore, you should get your things actually checked before you go in for this particular questionnaire. Now you go on number 17. Divyan, number 17.
Yes, sir.
Number 17 basically talks about construct validity. Okay. Internal validity. How do you do this particular validity and what is the need of this particular validity? So you have construct validity, you have internal validity, and you have external validity. Construct validity essentially requires the researcher to select the correct tool or method for the concept being studied. So, maybe it's quite likely that you want to study the orientation of people, okay, towards politics. Your study is orientation of people towards politics in 2023. And what you're doing is you're doing a literature review for this, okay, or you're doing a library research. So it is not valid at all. How will you say on the basis of literature that this is what we are inferring from the data? So for this, you need to go and you need to do a survey only. So that is why correct tool is a survey, or tool would be an interview. That becomes a tool. So these are the things that becomes more important to be studied, or more important, which tool is to be used to understand what. So that is what is called as construct validity. So while construction itself, you're doing that particular validity. Second is internal validity. It is established when your research demonstrates causal relationship. What is the causal relationship? Does one dependent variable affect the other variable? So that is what you are trying to study in internal validity. And external validity generally determines if findings can be generalized beyond the multiple cases. So whatever cases that you have, can we go beyond that and can we understand cases in that particular sense? Okay. Next, please. Next slide. This will be the last slide. Okay. So here, when you're talking about internal validity and external validity, okay, you find that whenever you're doing validity, you can see the validity cone, and you can see that there is multiple case study, field experiment, longitudinal field survey, multiple lab experiments, stimulation, ethnography, cross-sectional survey. So all of these will come in your, this is how your research methodology should. Whereas if you're looking at internal validity, only maths proof, on the basis of that, you can say, okay, fine, this is a single lab experiment. So this is called as validity frontier. Okay. And if suppose you're doing external validity, so single case study or cross-sectional field survey you can do. Okay. So this is what you do. So this particular study becomes very important. And when you're designing your research, these are some of the things that you need to bring in to the fore to understand what and how to do the qualitative research. This is what I think I've made sense by telling you, because the research methodology cannot be, this particular part, you need more personal interaction. Based on that, we can do this. We can take some questions and all those kind of things. But this is motamoti, this is what I have. Thank you very much. Divyang, I'm done.
Okay. I request the participants, if they have any question to put before sir, kindly put your questions in the chat box.
Was it too complicated, firstly?
Yes, the participants can share their opinion also. If you feel it's complicated or whatever is your output from this particular session, you can share your views as well.
You can stop sharing, by the way. Yeah. I've already shared the this thing, what do you say? The PPTs. So it's with Divyang. So somebody is Hetal Pandya is writing. May I request for PPT? What reference? Oh, reference. I mean, this is all my data, whatever I could do, I have just tried to, whatever I worked. So I've just clubbed everything together. So no questions, I guess.
Is there any question? Participants? Okay, there is one question, sir. What are the key criteria to frame a research design?
Okay, key criteria to see your, first of all, your first thing. Can you just go on that PPT and share the construct validity? That is the thing. That is what is important. Okay. First of all, you need to understand the problem. Secondly, what are you going to do with that particular research problem? What method are you going to use to study that particular thing? Okay, that is methodology part becomes very important. And finally, whenever you're looking at that, in your research design, your construct validity becomes most important. Okay, how are you constructing it? मतलब आपको ढूंढना कुछ है, आप यूज कुछ और कर रहे हो, तो पूरा का पूरा सेंस ही नहीं है फिर उसमें. Then you don't make sense at all, isn't it? So therefore, whenever you're looking at some of these things, okay, when you're designing your research, at that point of time, you should determine what should be your tools that you're going to use and what are you going to investigate. So your tools that whatever you're going to investigate should have commensurate tools also. वो होना चाहिए. So that is the most important part of the research design.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other question from the students? Okay. So we have just a small notice to all the students that we will share a feedback link with you. Kindly fill up the form for the purpose of getting your certificates.
This could have been,
And,
for my lecture, it could have been a bit complicated because, unless and until people know research methodology, it becomes very difficult to understand these particular things. But I mean, but always there should be some beginning.
Yes, definitely, sir. And in this short span of time, sir, you have actually given an entire overview about this quantitative research. So thank you so much, sir, for your guidance, for your information that you have shared with us. And
Thank you.
also the way you have covered by showing us the questionnaire, that also was very much effective. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. We will expect that you will be associated with us in later programs as well. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, bye.
Okay, you can find the chat in the chat box. There's a feedback link given. So kindly fill up the form.
Madam, if it is done, we can end up with the session.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We'll close the meeting in 2 minutes. Yeah. So that students can actually submit their feedback in the chat box.
Okay. Okay.